Captain Jake Collins stood on the bridge of the exploration ship Aurora's Edge, watching the planet below spin slowly on the main screen. The world looked dead and empty, just like the report said. No plants, no animals, no cities, just rocks and dust under a pale yellow sun. Any signs of mineral deposits? Jake asked his engineer, Lisa Martinez. She was bent over her scanner, checking the readings for the third time. "Looks good, Captain," Lisa said. "Iron, copper, and something else I can't identify. Could be valuable." Jake nodded. The Colonial Authority wanted them to find new mining sites. Earth needed resources, and empty planets were perfect for setting up automated mining stations. "No one to bother, no ecosystems to worry about. Take us down for a closer look," Jake ordered. The ship's pilot, Ryan Blake, began the descent toward the planet's surface. Dr. Paul Henderson, the ship's medic, looked up from his medical scanner. "The atmosphere is breathable but thin. We'll need oxygen masks if we go outside." The Aurora's Edge landed in a flat area between two rocky hills. Jake assembled a small team to explore the area. He took Lisa, Dr. Henderson, and 2 security officers. They put on their environmental suits and stepped out onto the alien world. The ground crunched under their boots. The air was cold and dry. Jake's scanner showed the mineral deposits were about 2 kilometers away, in a deep canyon. "Let's go take a look," Jake said. They walked across the barren landscape, following their scanners toward the canyon. The silence was complete except for their breathing and footsteps. No wind, no sounds of life. When they reached the canyon edge, Lisa pointed down. "Captain, look at that!" At the bottom of the canyon, something metallic glinted in the sunlight. It was partially buried under rocks and sand, but Jake could see it was artificial. A ship. "That's not human design," Dr. Henderson said, adjusting his scanner. "The metal composition is completely different from anything we use." Jake felt his heart rate increase. First contact protocols flashed through his mind. They had found evidence of alien technology. This was supposed to be reported immediately to Earth Command. "We're going down for a closer look," Jake decided. But carefully. They found a path down into the canyon. The alien ship was larger than it looked from above, maybe the size of a small cruiser. Its hull was smooth and curved, with no visible seams or bolts. It looked grown rather than built. "Life signs?" Jake asked Dr. Henderson. The doctor checked his scanner and frowned. "Something, very faint, inside the ship." Jake's training told him to call for backup, to follow protocols, to wait for orders from Earth Command. But something else told him that whoever was inside might not have time to wait. "Can we get inside?" he asked Lisa. The engineer examined the hull and found what looked like a door. When she touched it, the metal simply dissolved away, revealing an opening. "Impressive technology," she whispered. Jake led the team inside. The interior was dark, lit only by their flashlights. The walls were the same smooth material as the outside. Bodies lay scattered throughout the corridors. The aliens were tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. They had been dead for some time. "This way," Dr. Henderson said, following his life sign readings. "Whatever's alive is deeper in the ship." They moved through winding corridors until they reached what looked like a medical bay. Dr. Henderson's scanner was beeping rapidly now. "In there," he said, pointing to a small alcove. Jake shined his light into the space and gasped. A small figure lay on what appeared to be a medical bed. It was clearly the same species as the dead aliens, but much smaller. A child. The alien child was barely breathing. Her pale blue skin was almost white, and her large eyes were closed. Strange tubes connected her to machines that flickered weakly. "She's dying," Dr. Henderson said after scanning her. "The life support systems are failing." Jake looked at the child. She couldn't be more than 7 or 8 years old in human terms. Her chest rose and fell slowly, each breath seeming harder than the last. "Can we save her?" Jake asked. "I don't know," Dr. Henderson admitted. "I've never treated an alien before. Her physiology could be completely different from ours." Jake made his decision. "We're taking her back to the ship." "Captain," one of the security officers said. "Protocols require—" "I know what the protocols say," Jake interrupted. "But I'm not going to watch a child die when we might be able to help." They carefully disconnected the alien child from the failing machines and carried her back to their ship. Dr. Henderson set up the medical bay while Jake held the small alien in his arms. She was surprisingly light and her skin felt cool to the touch. Once in the medical bay, Dr. Henderson began his examination. Her blood is copper-based instead of iron-based, he explained as he worked. That's why her skin is blue. Her heart rate is much slower than human normal, but that seems right for her species. Jake watched as the doctor tried different treatments. The child's breathing became more regular, and some color returned to her skin. After several hours, her large, dark eyes opened and looked around in confusion. When she saw Jake, she made a soft sound, almost like a bird's chirp. Jake smiled and spoke gently to her, even though he knew she couldn't understand. "It's okay," he said. "You're safe now." The alien child listened to his voice and seemed to calm down. Dr. Henderson continued his treatments, and slowly the child grew stronger. She was able to sit up and drink small amounts of water, which seemed to help her greatly. Jake found himself spending more and more time with the child. She was curious about everything on the ship, pointing at objects and making questioning sounds. Jake started calling her Little One, since they didn't know her real name. Dr. Henderson discovered that the child's species needed certain minerals that were naturally found in Earth's water. Jake made sure she always had fresh water to drink, even sharing his own rations when supplies ran low. The child began to trust Jake completely. She would reach for him when she was scared, and seemed most comfortable when he was nearby. Jake felt a strange protective instinct growing stronger each day. After 2 weeks, the child was much healthier. She had learned to understand some basic human gestures and had even started making attempts to copy human words. Jake taught her simple things like yes and no and food. One day, the child drew pictures on a tablet Jake had given her. The drawings showed tall blue figures like herself, and she pointed to the stars visible through the medical bay window. The message was clear. She had family somewhere out there. Jake knew they would come looking for her. The question was when and what would happen when they arrived. For now, he was content to care for the child and help her recover. He had no idea that his simple act of compassion would change not just his life, but the future of humanity itself. 3 weeks after finding the alien child, Jake was in the ship's galley preparing her morning meal when Ryan Blake's voice crackled over the communication system. "Captain, to the bridge immediately. We have multiple contacts approaching our position." Jake felt his stomach drop. He looked at the alien child who was sitting at a small table they had set up for her. She had grown stronger every day, and her blue skin now had a healthy glow. She looked up at him with her large dark eyes, sensing something was wrong. "Stay here with Dr. Henderson," Jake told her gently, though he knew she only understood a few words. He made hand gestures that she had learned meant safe and wait. On the bridge, Jake saw the main screen filled with contacts. Dozens of ships were moving toward their position, much larger than anything in Earth's fleet. The lead ship was massive, easily 10 times the size of the Aurora's Edge. "Where did they come from?" Jake asked. "They just appeared," Ryan said, his voice tight with worry. "No warning, no energy signature. 1 second empty space, the next second they were there." Lisa was working frantically at her engineering station. "Captain, their technology is far beyond ours. I'm reading energy levels that should be impossible." Jake opened a communication channel to Admiral Kevin Torres, his superior officer who was stationed 3 systems away. The time delay meant any conversation would take minutes, but Earth Command needed to know what was happening. "Admiral Torres, this is Captain Collins. We have first contact situation. Multiple alien vessels, presumed hostile intent, requesting immediate backup and instructions." While waiting for a response, Jake watched the alien fleet arrange itself in what looked like a battle formation. The smaller ships formed a protective circle around the massive flagship. "Captain," Dr. Henderson's voice came over the intercom. "The child is getting upset. She's pointing at the screen and making distress sounds." Jake made a decision that would change everything. "Bring her to the bridge." "Sir, that's not standard protocol." "Nothing about this situation is standard," Jake said. "If these are her people, maybe she can help us communicate." Dr. Henderson arrived with the alien child, who immediately ran to the main viewing screen when she saw the ships. She pressed her small hands against the screen and began making rapid chirping sounds, her eyes wide with excitement. "She recognizes them," Jake said. "These are definitely her people." The communication system suddenly activated without any input from Ryan. A holographic image appeared in the center of the bridge, showing a tall blue alien in what looked like military armor. The alien's bioluminescent markings pulsed with an angry red light. When the alien spoke, his voice was deep and harsh, even through the universal translator that was trying to make sense of the language. Unknown vessel, you will surrender the stolen Veltar child immediately or be destroyed. Jake stepped forward, keeping his hands visible and open. I am Captain Jake Collins of the Earth vessel Aurora's Edge. We found the child injured and alone. We provided medical care and have been caring for her. The alien's markings pulsed brighter red. Lies. The child was taken during a raid. Return her now. The alien child suddenly ran forward and began chirping rapidly at the hologram. The alien commander's expression changed from anger to confusion as he listened to her. She's telling them what really happened, Dr. Henderson whispered. After several minutes of the child's explanation, the alien commander's markings changed from red to a cooler blue. The child claims you saved her life. This requires investigation. We're willing to cooperate, Jake said. We only want to return the child safely to her family. You will be boarded for inspection, the commander announced. Any resistance will result in your destruction. The hologram disappeared, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Jake could see smaller ships detaching from the main fleet and moving toward them. Captain, Admiral Torres's delayed response finally came through. Under no circumstances are you to allow alien forces aboard your ship. Maintain defensive posture and wait for reinforcement. Jake looked at the alien child, who was now clinging to his leg and looking scared. The approaching alien ships could destroy the Aurora's Edge without any effort. But more than that, Jake had grown to care for the child. She trusted him, and he wasn't about to let her become a casualty of first contact politics. Admiral, with respect, reinforcement is days away and we're outgunned 100 to 1. I'm going to attempt peaceful resolution. Collins, that's a direct order. Jake turned off the communication. Ryan, open a channel to the alien ships. Captain Collins to Veltar Commander. Permission granted to board. I will personally ensure the child's safety during the transfer. 20 minutes later, an alien shuttle docked with the Aurora's Edge. Jake met the boarding party in the airlock with the child standing beside him. She had insisted on coming, despite Dr. Henderson's concerns. The lead alien was even taller than Jake had expected, nearly 7 feet tall with intricate bioluminescent markings covering his arms and face. Behind him were 6 other aliens in what looked like advanced armor. I am High Navigator Zethara, the lead alien said through his translator device. You will explain how you came to possess a Veltar child. Jake told the story simply and honestly, from finding the crashed ship to caring for the child these past weeks. As he spoke, the alien child moved closer to him, eventually taking his hand. Zethara observed this interaction carefully. The child shows unusual attachment to you. This is not normal Veltar behavior with strangers. She was scared and hurt when we found her, Jake explained. I've been taking care of her daily needs. Children form bonds with their caregivers. Indeed, Zethara said thoughtfully. Show me where she has been staying. Jake led the group through the ship, starting with the medical bay, where they had first treated her. Dr. Henderson explained the medical procedures they had used, showing how they had adapted human medicine for Veltar physiology. In the child's sleeping quarters, Zethara examined the small bed Jake had made for her, the toys he had fashioned from ship components, and the drawings she had made showing her rescue and daily life aboard the ship. You have cared for her as if she were your own offspring, Zethara observed. She needed help, Jake said simply. Any decent person would have done the same. Zethara's markings shifted to a pattern Jake hadn't seen before. Captain Collins, there is something you must understand. This child is not simply any Veltar. She is Kira, daughter of Matriarch Velandra, one of our most powerful leaders. Jake felt the blood drain from his face. I had no idea. We just wanted to help her. Her scientific expedition was attacked by Krex raiders 3 months ago. All ships were destroyed, all hands presumed lost. Her mother has been grief-stricken. The child Kira seemed to understand that they were talking about her. She looked up at Jake and made the soft chirping sound she used when she wanted his attention. The matriarch is coming, Zethara announced. She will want to see for herself how her daughter survived and who saved her life. Jake nodded, though he felt nervous about meeting someone described as one of their most powerful leaders. When will she arrive? Jake asked. Zethara's markings pulsed once. She's already here. The flagship carries the matriarch herself. She has been traveling across half the galaxy searching for any trace of her daughter. Jake looked down at Kira, who was still holding his hand. He had known this moment would come, when he would have to give her back to her real family. But he hadn't expected it to feel this difficult. We'll prepare for her arrival, Jake said. Kira belongs with her people. But as Zethara's markings shifted to yet another pattern Jake couldn't read, he had the feeling that things were about to become much more complicated than a simple reunion. The airlock of the Aurora's Edge had never felt so small. Jake stood waiting with Kira beside him, watching as the most powerful alien he had ever encountered prepared to board his ship. Matriarch Velandra was impressive even before she stepped through the doorway. Nearly 8 feet tall, her bioluminescent markings covered almost her entire body in intricate patterns that seemed to move and shift like living art. Her presence filled the room with an energy that made Jake's skin tingle. Behind her came an entourage of what Jake assumed were advisors and guards. All were tall and elegant, but none matched the matriarch's commanding presence. When Velandra's eyes found Kira, her markings suddenly blazed with brilliant gold light. She dropped to one knee and opened her arms. Jake expected Kira to run to her mother immediately. Instead, Kira looked up at Jake first as if asking permission. Jake smiled and nodded, gently pushing her forward. Go on, little one. That's your mother. Kira walked slowly toward Velandra, then broke into a run for the last few steps. Mother and daughter embraced, and Jake could hear soft musical sounds as they spoke in their native language. But after only a few moments, something unexpected happened. Kira pulled away from her mother and ran back to Jake, wrapping her small arms around his leg. She began speaking rapidly in her chirping language, pointing between Jake and her mother. Velandra's markings shifted from gold to deep blue as she listened to her daughter, her large eyes fixed on Jake with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. What is she saying? Jake asked Dr. Henderson, who was monitoring with his translator device. The translator is picking up fragments, Dr. Henderson said quietly. Words like protector, life-giver, and something that might mean new parent. Velandra stood gracefully and approached Jake. When she spoke, her voice was musical but powerful. Captain Collins, my daughter tells me an interesting story. She says you saved her life when her own people's medicine had failed. Dr. Henderson did most of the medical work, Jake said modestly. I just made sure she felt safe. She says you gave her your own water when supplies were low. Jake shrugged. She needed it more than I did. She says you made toys for her with your own hands. She was bored. Children need things to play with. Velandra's markings began to pulse in a pattern Jake had never seen before. She says you learned her favorite foods and prepared them yourself every day. Well, yes. She's just a child. Someone had to take care of her. She says you stayed with her when she had nightmares and taught her words in your language so she wouldn't feel alone. Jake felt heat rise in his cheeks. Anyone would have done the same. Velandra studied him for a long moment. Captain Collins, you are wrong. Not anyone would have done the same. In fact, very few would have risked their careers and their ship's safety to save a child of an unknown species. I couldn't just let her die, Jake said simply. Velandra's markings suddenly blazed brilliant white, and she began speaking in formal ceremonial tones. Even without understanding the language, Jake could tell this was something important. High Navigator Zethara, who had remained silent until now, stepped forward with what looked like shock on his alien features. Matriarch, are you certain? The implications? I am very certain, Velandra said, switching back to the translated language. Captain Collins, do you understand what Kethmore means in our culture? Jake shook his head. I'm afraid not. When someone saves a child's life and cares for them as their own parent would, they become Kethmore. It means chosen family. In our law and culture, you have the same rights and responsibilities as if you were born into our family line. Jake felt confused. I don't understand. I was just helping. My daughter has claimed you as Kethmore, Velandra continued, and I, as her mother and as matriarch of the House of Velandra, accept this claim. You are now family. Dr. Henderson's translator device was beeping rapidly as it tried to process the formal declarations being made by the other Veltar in the room. Captain, Dr. Henderson whispered, I think they're making some kind of official record of this. This seems to be a legal proceeding. Jake looked down at Kira, who was still holding onto his leg and looking up at him with bright, happy eyes. What does this mean exactly? It means, Velandra said, that you are now under the protection of one of the most powerful houses in Veltar space. It means my resources are your resources, my enemies are your enemies, and my family's honor is tied to your actions. And it means, Zithara added, his markings showing what Jake was beginning to recognize as concern, that your people, by extension, are now under our protection as well. Any attack on humans could be considered an attack on the House of Velandra. Jake felt overwhelmed. I don't know anything about your politics or culture. I'm just a ship captain who found a hurt child, which is exactly why Kira chose you, Velandra said with something that might have been a smile. You acted from compassion, not calculation. That is rare in any species. Kira chirped something and pointed toward the ship's galley. Jake recognized her gesture for being hungry. She wants lunch, Jake said automatically. She likes the protein bars mixed with water to make a paste, but only if the water has been filtered twice. And she won't eat if there are too many people watching. Velandra's markings pulsed with amusement. You know her habits better than I do at this moment. She has been away from home for months, but she has found a new parent. I'm not trying to replace you, Jake said quickly. You're her real mother. Among Veltar, family is not limited by biology, Velandra explained. Children can have many parents and all are valued equally. Kira has chosen you, and I honor her choice. Jake felt a communication request coming through from Admiral Torres. He looked at the indicator light, knowing he would have to explain the situation to Earth Command. Matriarch, I need to report this to my superiors. They'll have questions about what this means for relations between our species. Of course, Velandra said, but understand that this claim cannot be undone. In accepting the role of Kethmore, you have made a permanent bond. Kira will always be your daughter, just as she is mine. Jake looked at the small alien child who had somehow become the center of an interstellar diplomatic situation. She looked back at him with complete trust and affection. I understand, Jake said, and realized he meant it. I accept the responsibility. Velandra's markings blazed with approval. Then let us discuss what this means for both our peoples. You have given me back my daughter, and now you are my family as well. This creates opportunities but also dangers. What kind of dangers? Jake asked. The Krex Dominion has been raiding our ships and colonies, Velandra explained. When they learn that humans are now protected by Veltar law, they may decide that your colonies are legitimate targets for their aggression. Jake felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. By saving one child, he had potentially put all of humanity at risk. But when he looked at Kira's bright, trusting face, he knew he would make the same choice again. Then we'll have to be ready for them, Jake said. Velandra's markings showed approval. Spoken like true family, she said. Come, let us feed my daughter and discuss the future of our peoples. As they walked toward the galley, Jake realized his life had just changed forever. He was no longer just a human ship captain. He was now part of an alien family, with all the complications that would bring. 2 months after being claimed as family by Matriarch Velandra, Jake found himself in a sterile conference room on Earth's orbital station, facing a panel of admirals and politicians who all wanted something from him. Admiral Torres sat at the head of the table, looking tired. Captain Collins, Earth Command wants you to understand the significance of your position. You are our only official family connection to an advanced alien civilization. Jake shifted uncomfortably in his uniform. Through the station's windows, he could see Velandra's flagship waiting in orbit. Kira was aboard, and he missed her already. The separation was hard on both of them. I understand the significance, Admiral, but I want to make sure everyone understands that my first responsibility is to Kira's well-being. Secretary of Colonial Affairs Margaret Foster leaned forward. Captain, your personal feelings are noted, but we need to discuss strategic advantages. The Veltar have offered to share limited technology with Earth. This could advance our civilization by centuries. In exchange for what? Jake asked. Cultural exchange, Admiral Torres replied. They want humans to establish a permanent presence on their homeworld. Specifically, they want you to serve as ambassador. Jake had expected this. Velandra had made the offer during their last meeting, and he had been considering it seriously. But he knew there were complications. What about the Krex Dominion? Jake asked. Matriarch Velandra warned that they might target human colonies once they learn about our connection to the Veltar. Secretary Foster's expression darkened. Intelligence reports suggest the Krex have already learned about the alliance. We've had 3 raids on outer colonies in the past month. They're testing our defenses. Any casualties? Jake asked, though he dreaded the answer. 17 dead at New Helsinki, Admiral Torres said quietly. The raiders specifically targeted human settlements and left Veltar trade stations alone. The message was clear. Jake felt sick. People had died because he had saved an alien child. He tried to push down the guilt, knowing it was irrational, but the weight of responsibility was crushing. There's more. Secretary Foster continued. The Kreks have sent diplomatic messages to other human colonies, offering protection in exchange for abandoning the Veltar alliance. Some colony governors are considering it. They're trying to divide us, Jake realized exactly, which is why your role as ambassador is so critical. We need to show that the human-Veltar alliance is strong and permanent. Jake's communication device chimed with an incoming message from the Veltar flagship. It was a video call from Kira, who had been learning to use human technology. Her blue face appeared on the small screen, and she immediately began chattering in her native language mixed with the English words she had learned. "Jake, father," she said, using her favorite term for him. "When come home? Miss you much." Jake smiled despite the serious situation.
"Soon, little one."
"I'm in important meetings." "Boring meetings?" Kira asked, having learned that Jake didn't enjoy most official discussions. "Very boring meetings," Jake confirmed, earning a few chuckles from the admirals. Kira held up a drawing she had made. It showed stick figures of herself, Jake, and her mother standing together under what looked like two different colored suns. "Home picture," she explained. "You, me, Mother Valandra. Happy family on Veltar world." Jake felt his throat tighten. "It's beautiful, Kira. I'll see you soon." After ending the call, the room was quiet for a moment. "She's remarkable," Secretary Foster said softly. "Hard to believe she's not human sometimes. She's just a child who wants her family together," Jake said. "Which brings me to my decision about the ambassador position." Admiral Torres leaned forward. "And I'll accept, but with conditions. I want to bring Lisa Martinez, Dr. Henderson, and Ryan Blake with me. Kira knows and trusts them. I also want guarantees that Earth will provide military support if the Veltar homeworld is attacked." "Done," Secretary Foster said immediately. "What else?" "I want regular communication with Earth Command, and the authority to make immediate decisions if human colonies are threatened. No waiting for committee approval." Admiral Torres nodded. "You'll have it. When can you leave?" "I need a week to wrap up affairs here and brief my replacement team. But Admiral, there's something else we need to discuss." Jake activated his personal tablet and showed them intelligence reports that Valandra had shared with him. The Kreks aren't just random raiders. They're building up for a major offensive. Matriarch Valandra believes they're planning to attack the Veltar homeworld directly. The room erupted in concerned murmurs. Secretary Foster studied the data. "When?" "Soon, maybe weeks, not months. They think if they can capture or kill me and Kira, they can break the human Veltar alliance before it really begins." Admiral Torres stood up abruptly. "Then we need to accelerate the timeline. Can you leave in 3 days instead of a week?" "If necessary," Jake agreed. "But I'll need authorization to take defensive measures. If we're walking into a war zone, I want to be prepared." 2 days later, Jake stood in the shuttle bay of the Aurora's Edge, watching his crew load supplies for their journey to the Veltar homeworld. Lisa, Dr. Henderson, and Ryan had all volunteered to come with him, though he had made sure they understood the risks. "Second thoughts?" Dr. Henderson asked, joining Jake at the observation window. "About leaving Earth? No, about putting you all in danger?" "Yes. Jake, we've been through this. Kira is family to all of us now. And frankly, this is the most important mission any of us will ever have." Lisa Martinez walked over carrying a data pad.
"Captain, I've been analyzing the Veltar technology they're sharing with us.
"The energy systems alone could revolutionize human space travel." "Worth the risk?" Jake asked. "Worth the risk," Lisa confirmed. Ryan Blake's voice came over the communication system. "Captain, we're receiving a priority message from the Veltar flagship. It's Matriarch Valandra." Jake hurried to the bridge where Valandra's imposing figure appeared on the main screen. Her bioluminescent markings were pulsing with urgent patterns. "Jake, my family," she said, "we have received intelligence that the Kreks fleet is moving toward our territory ahead of schedule. They will reach the homeworld in 2 weeks. "How many ships?" Jake asked. "More than we expected. Nearly 300 vessels. They have been gathering forces from across their territory." Jake felt his stomach drop. "What are our defensive capabilities?" "Substantial but not overwhelming. The battle will be close." Valandra paused, her markings shifting to a pattern Jake had learned meant deep concern. "There is something else. The Kreks have specifically demanded that you and Kira be turned over to them. They believe that eliminating the human-Veltar bond will prevent other species from allying with us. They want to make an example of us. Jake realized. Yes, which means the battle will not just be about territory or resources. It will be about the future of interspecies cooperation. Jake looked around the bridge at his crew, people who had become his chosen family just as Kira had. They were all looking at him with determination, not fear. Then we'd better make sure they lose, Jake said. Valandra's markings blazed with approval, spoken like true Veltar. Come home quickly, my son. Your daughter misses you, and we have a war to prepare for. As the communication ended, Jake realized that he had just committed himself and his crew to participating in an alien war. But when he thought of Kira's bright, trusting face, he knew they were fighting for something worth protecting. The future of peaceful cooperation between species hung in the balance, and somehow it all centered on one small alien child who had chosen to love a human stranger. The Veltar homeworld was beautiful. As Jake's shuttle descended through the atmosphere, he could see vast cities that seemed to grow from the landscape itself, their organic architecture blending perfectly with forests and rivers. 3 moons hung in the purple sky, and the double suns cast everything in a warm, golden light. Kira pressed her face against the shuttle window, chattering excitedly as she pointed out landmarks to Jake. Home! Jake, father, see home now. It's incredible, Dr. Henderson said from his seat across the aisle. The cities look alive. They are in a way, Valandra explained. She had met them at the system's edge and was accompanying them down to the surface. Our architecture is based on modified plant life. The buildings grow and adapt to their inhabitants' needs. Lisa Martinez was scanning everything with her engineering sensors. The energy signatures are unlike anything in human technology. How do you power entire cities without visible generators? Geothermal and solar collection, but also bioelectric systems. The buildings themselves generate and store power. Valandra's markings showed pride in her people's achievements. They landed at what Valandra called the family complex, a sprawling series of interconnected buildings that served as both her home and administrative center. Jake stepped out of the shuttle and immediately felt the difference in gravity, lighter than Earth, making each step feel springy. Kira jumped out after him and immediately ran in circles, delighted to be home. She grabbed Jake's hand and began pulling him toward the nearest building. Come see room. Show everything, she said in her mixed language. Jake let himself be dragged along with the rest of his team following. Valandra walked beside them, her markings showing contentment. She has talked of nothing but showing you her home for weeks, Valandra said. You should be honored. Veltar children rarely form such strong attachments to non-family members. I'm not non-family anymore, Jake pointed out. No, you are not, and my people are beginning to understand what that means. Over the next few days, Jake and his team settled into their new roles as Earth's first ambassadors to the Veltar homeworld. Jake spent his mornings in diplomatic meetings and his afternoons with Kira, helping her readjust to home while learning about Veltar culture himself. The integration wasn't always easy. Human and Veltar mealtimes were different. Their sleep cycles didn't match, and some Veltar customs seemed strange to human sensibilities. But gradually, accommodations were made on both sides. Dr. Henderson established a medical exchange program, learning Veltar healing techniques while teaching human emergency medicine. Lisa worked with Veltar engineers on technology sharing projects. Ryan set up communication networks to keep Earth informed of their progress. But the peaceful routine was shattered when long-range sensors detected the approaching Kreks fleet. 280 ships. High Navigator Zethara reported in the Emergency Council meeting. They'll reach our outer defensive perimeter in 3 days. Jake studied the tactical displays, his military training kicking in. What are our defensive capabilities? 150 ships of various classes, Valandra replied. Our technology is superior, but they have numerical advantage. What about ground defenses? Jake asked. Extensive, but if they break through the fleet, they could still cause significant damage to population centers. Jake looked at the defensive plans and saw something that bothered him. You're planning to meet them in deep space, far from the planet. Standard Veltar strategy, Zethara confirmed. Keep the battle away from civilian populations. But that plays to their strengths, Jake said. In open space, numbers matter more than technology. You need to draw them closer. Use the planet's gravity well and your orbital defenses. The Veltar commanders exchanged looks. That would put the homeworld at risk, one of them said. It's already at risk, Jake pointed out. But fighting closer to home gives you advantages they can't counter. Velandra considered this. Explain your thinking. Jake activated the holographic display and began sketching out a battle plan. Use your faster ships to harass their fleet as they approach. Make them think you're retreating in panic. Draw them into the inner system where your orbital platforms can support the fleet. The risk, Zethara began, is worth it if it means winning instead of just delaying defeat, Jake finished. Sometimes you have to risk everything to save everything. After hours of discussion, Velandra made the decision to try Jake's strategy. The Veltar fleet would make a fighting retreat, drawing the Kreks into the inner system for a decisive battle. 2 days later, Jake stood in the command center watching the battle unfold on the main displays. Kira was safely in a deep shelter with other civilian children, though she had not wanted to leave Jake's side. First contact with Krek's forward elements, the tactical officer reported. Our scouts are engaging. Jake watched as small Veltar ships darted in and out of the Krek's formation, striking fast and retreating before the enemy could respond effectively. It was working exactly as he had hoped. They're taking the bait, Velandra said, standing beside him. The main fleet is accelerating toward the inner system. For 6 hours, the running battle continued. The Veltar ships gradually fell back, making the Krek's fleet think they were winning. By the time the enemy realized it was a trap, they were already committed to the inner system. Orbital platforms coming online, the weapons officer announced. All defensive systems ready. This is it, Jake said. Everything depends on the next few hours. The battle that followed was unlike anything Jake had ever witnessed. Veltar ships moved with impossible grace, their bioengineered hulls allowing them to change direction in ways that defied human understanding of physics. Krek ships were brutally efficient, using overwhelming firepower to punch through defenses. Jake found himself coordinating communications between different Veltar commanders, his human perspective helping them see tactical opportunities they might have missed. When a group of Krek ships broke through the main line and headed for the planet, Jake was the one who organized the intercept. 3 enemy vessels heading for the capital city, Jake announced. I need volunteers for intercept mission. I'll take them, came a voice over the communication. It was Commander Thelaris, one of Velandra's most trusted officers. Jake coordinated the intercept from the ground, using orbital sensor data to guide Thelaris to the optimal attack position. But something went wrong. The Krek ships detected the trap and turned to attack the capital directly. They're coming in too fast, Jake realized. They'll reach the city before the intercept can stop them. Without thinking, Jake grabbed his communication headset and ran for the shelter where Kira was hiding. If the enemy was coming for them specifically, he wouldn't let them find her defenseless. He reached the shelter just as the first Krek ship broke through the atmosphere. Emergency alarms were blaring throughout the city, and Jake could see explosions lighting up the sky. Kira ran to him as soon as he entered the shelter. Jake, father, scared. It's going to be okay, Jake promised, though he wasn't sure he believed it himself. The shelter shook as something exploded nearby. Through the reinforced windows, Jake could see Krek soldiers landing in the city square. They were heading directly for the shelter. They know we're here, Jake realized. Someone had given them intelligence about where to find him and Kira. Jake made a quick decision. If the enemy wanted him, he wouldn't let them harm innocent civilians to get him. He kissed Kira's forehead and handed her to Dr. Henderson. Take care of her, he said. Jake, no, Dr. Henderson protested. You can't go out there. I have to. They're here for me. Maybe I can draw them away from the shelter. Jake stepped outside just as the first Krek soldiers reached the shelter entrance. They were massive, even larger than Veltar, with thick armor and heavy weapons. I am Captain Jake Collins, he announced. I believe you're looking for me. The lead Krek soldier raised his weapon, but before he could fire, a brilliant beam of energy struck him from above. Veltar fighters had arrived, led by Velandra herself in her personal combat armor. The battle for the shelter was brief but intense. Veltar warriors moved with deadly precision, while Jake used his knowledge of human military tactics to coordinate their attack. When it was over, all the Krek soldiers were dead or captured, but Jake had been wounded in the fighting, taking a blast from a Krek's weapon that had been aimed at Kira. As he lay bleeding on the ground, He could hear the sounds of battle moving away from the city. The orbital defense had held and the Krex fleet was retreating. "You fool," Valandra said, kneeling beside him as Dr. Henderson worked to treat his wounds. "Why did you risk yourself like that?" "Same reason you would have," Jake said weakly. "To protect family." As he recovered over the following weeks, Jake learned that the battle had been a complete victory. The Krex fleet had been destroyed or scattered, and their military power was broken for years to come. More importantly, other species had observed the battle and seen how humans and Veltar fought together as true allies. 3 months later, Jake stood in the embassy gardens watching Kira play with a group of children, some Veltar, some from other allied species, and even a few human children whose families had come to work on the homeworld. "No regrets?" Valandra asked, joining him in the garden.